Hello legends. Today I catch up with Cub member Hitesh Dhawan, the founder and CEO of Neuronimbus. Hitesh started Neuronimbus like 20 years ago, which is a technology company that has exploded to have over 200 technology experts on its staff, working and building products for some of the world's largest businesses, particularly in Asia. Hitesh, a really smart guy. I love the way he problem solved different things in business. I loved his opinion on AI, on building an MVP, and on how to remove yourself from the business, how to not be in the day-to-day, and how he did that. He was a really cool guy. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hitesh, my brother, welcome to our new studio.
Yes, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, I'm here. I made it. Yeah, welcome to the podcast as well.
Yeah.
You know, we've
I'm
been
happy to be here.
good. Well, I'm happy to have you here. We've been doing this a long time now. We're doing it 4 years, and after our conversation, whenever it was, I can't actually remember when we met.
I think
it wasn't that long ago.
Sometime last month.
Yeah. I thought it was longer than that, but that's better. That means things fresh in my mind. But I was like, man, I got to get you on the podcast and start talking. But why don't you give us a bit of an introduction to your business currently?
So Neuronimbus is the business as I call it. It's my longest love affair. Started almost a little over 20 years back. Digital solutions company. It's grown into multiple practices now. So from digital transformation, modernization of processes on one side, to product development, which is another practice where you come to me and say that I want to build this tech product, and I would give you the wares and the means of not just being able to just build it, but give you the right scalable strategy and solution, and then build it. To a design and customer experience practice. That's the third line of work. We call it Neuro Interactive. So
that's like UX, UI.
UX, UI, but done with a purpose. We've got a full approach that we've mapped out. It's called CRUX, CRUX, championing results through user experience. So it's all about saying, okay, what's the goal? And how do we get there through user experience? So there's some method to that madness, if I may say that.
So really, you guys build technology. You develop technology, but you also design it. That's the business.
A lot of times we work with different, much bigger tech companies where that UX practice would go in and engage with them and say, look, you sort out the tech. We'll take care of the user experience because you're obviously not very good at it. So, things like that.
So what is how do you actually create and figure out what a user experience should be? Because creating a user experience, like the way you think about it for a technology company or product, you could also implement that same kind of user experience system or customer experience system for a service-based business as well.
Yeah.
What is the best way to create and decide on the best possible user experience or customer experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the way it kind of starts is you don't start designing first. You first identify who's going to consume whatever you're making. That happens first. And then you start working backwards. You start chipping away one step at a time, and you say that, okay, if that's my target user, if that's the nuances of what they would like and not like, or that's the environment in which they will consume what is being built. So there are times where everybody says, why don't you make it an app? Chances are you don't need one because the environment in which it has to be used is not an app-friendly environment. Things like that. So you've got to really be very, very critical about who's my audience, what are they going to use it for, how are they going to use it for, what are their sensibilities, what are their interaction patterns, how mature or immature they are when it comes to technology. I mean, I've built platforms for drivers who are barely, the median education for them was, not even school, high school. So how do you build a product, a technology-intensive product for users that don't even understand too much of language, who are going to use a system while they're driving, who are on the road. So how do you do all of that? So you start with the goalpost, and then you start working backwards, and you chip away at saying, okay, does it make sense to do what you're planning to do? You got to actually do a bit of, bring in a few closed group user groups, and then kind of put a few things out there and, tell them, that's it, use. Tell me what's wrong, what's not wrong, because that's the best form of validation. And then there's a science behind it as well, what is the performance, how much usage patterns, what is it going to be used for? Is it once in a while, or is it you start in the morning with that platform or that product and you end the day with that? So all of that goes in, and then you start to design, not before. So it's
a few things you said, like a way that I wrote down what you said and how I thought about it is like, first, choose your target customer. Now, that's a big choice too, like figuring out,
of course,
well, who is my target customer? Because that is a big choice. And I'll talk more about that at the end, but like I'll use Boa as an example. Like, who's my target customer? Then what is the purpose of the product I'm creating? Like, what are we actually solving? And that's another big question.
Big question, yes.
What problem is the key problem that we're solving for this target customer? Yeah. And then the third layer that you said was, how are we actually solving it?
Yeah.
What is the best way this target demographic wants to solve this specific problem or the purpose of the app using?
Right.
Like that, I like that tier of like target demographic, purpose or target problem, and then how this product actually helps them solve that problem.
Absolutely.
And it's actually really hard to do that. Like
it is.
Because they're big decisions. And the question then I have is like, how do you make those decisions? Like, how do you know who is your target audience? For example, with Boa, well, the idea for Boa was to make really high quality networking and advisory and community accessible to entrepreneurs at every stage and in every location.
Right.
Now, that's still a big pool of people. Like there's a lot of early stage businesses or smaller businesses or more remote businesses that are very like that are many different demographics. So we didn't know like who specifically is the demographic. But now that the app's going and you can see which events get filled the most, which communities get filled the most, who's the most vocal socially, you can see women are a huge like target demographic on Boa and young business owners.
Yeah.
They're the two currently demographics, but we didn't know that to start. Yeah. If I knew that to start, that would have been awesome because I could have really designed it for them. Now we have to go through a rebrand and a rethink, like what you're saying.
Right.
So my question to you is, how do you actually know who your target? Like, how do you answer those problems? How do you know who your target demographic is? How do you choose one, or how do you know what the biggest problem that you're going to solve for them is?
I think this kind of is. It's a journey in a way where it doesn't start always with all the right answers, but you can get as close as possible to what it should be by making sure that right from the germination of the idea, let's say if we talk about Boa, right from when the idea was, given some shape, there's a fair amount of strategic thinking that goes in, and there is a fair amount of bouncing off the ideas, as we call it, happens to say that, okay, do I open it up, or do I target each and every person, or do I create that minimum viable experience, which will probably suit almost all categories, and then say, these are the few people who've kind of started to sing along a lot better. And, that's where you said, the female audience, the women entrepreneurs, and, that side started to come in and interact a lot more. And the young ones, new entrepreneurs started to come and interact a lot more. What is important is that your product and your experience is designed to capture that insight.
Yeah. You know what I think is genius about that? I think you actually said those words. It's almost think smaller.
Absolutely.
So when you're starting, sometimes you can see the grand vision of your business.
Yeah.
Like you're like, okay, there's going to be thousands of communities all over the country and they're going to be operating independently and every entrepreneur is going to find value in this platform. And, you know, you can think to like, and you might be right, but you know, that might be step 7. You're not even on step 1 yet. Like if you were to think like, what is the most powerful thing I can build now with the least possible amount of money?
Yeah.
Like it helps you kind of think smaller.
That's it.
And helps you really choose, okay, well, wait a second. This is the group I like working with the most, or this is the group that I relate to the most and can build a product better for them, and we can focus our marketing on them. And we, you know, it's actually, success is actually at the start, especially about thinking smaller.
Absolutely. I think 100%. The more specific you can get, the more narrowed down you can, you know, do things for you, the better it is, because every progressive step that you would take from there will be based on knowledge, information, data that you've been able to get, and then you would make more meaningful decisions going forward. There's so many conversations that I have with my clients, prospects, and I actually tell them that, look, think like, you know, you would probably want to just take that first little baby step and then build on it one step at a time. That's the best way to look at whatever technology you want to build or invest in. And then that's the other thing where, you know, my personal, I would say, approach has always been to say that, look at the cost in technology as investment and not as an expense. And that little shift in thinking brings huge difference in how you're going about approaching what do you want to build. Just that little thing, you know, if you just flip it and you don't look at it as an expense, but you look at it as an investment, and then if you start walking down that path, you start thinking returns on investment. You start thinking more strategically. It's never tactical because it's an investment. It's more capital. It's more, you know, so all of those things flip the switch in your head, and then you look at it and say, okay, hang on a minute. Why am I doing this? Let's take that first small step because it's an investment that I'm making, which is a more strategic investment, more long-term, more, I need to see returns. So if I need to see returns, I need to put in a little less and then see the return and then move forward and so on. So it's I think very, very important. Another very important stat, just to, you know, give you the picture, is you know, the ICT segment in Australia, or the technology market in Australia in 2024 is at about $130+ billion. Now the other slice of that fact is more than 30% of businesses in Australia haven't got the returns they were looking for from that investment. So you're looking at about just do the math, a few $1 billion of money that has been spent or is going to get spent by the end of the year with no returns, or not the returns that were expected.
Well, what does that mean? Isn't that anti-investment in technology?
No, what that means is that a lot of those decisions have been very tactical in nature. They've not been done the way it should have been.
Oh, with the mind frame that you're saying as an investment.
Exactly. If that was the case, a lot of those decisions wouldn't have been taken.
Yeah, I'm still kind of really obsessing currently over the idea of thinking small. And what I like about that idea is that, and this is probably where the bigger companies fall over, they have too much money.
Yeah.
Like if I had less money when I started Boa, let's say I had no money starting Boa, I would have been forced to think more. Yeah. You know, money can also be a bit of a curse. And so
it always is, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a beautiful curse. But if you were an early stage business listening and you're like, fuck, I got no money, I haven't got enough money, I can't compete. Actually, that could be your strength.
It could be. It can bring out the best.
Yes, that could be what makes you focus on the most important things.
Yeah, you know, the whole phrase of best bang for your buck.
That's it. Yeah, it forces the bang for buck.
Yeah,
exactly.
It does. But I think the trick is, and like you said, the trick is that you have the money, but you still think that through. That's the key.
You know? Yeah, that's when you're smart.
Yeah.
Dopes like me, like, let's do it, just do everything.
That's probably where you need a good sounding board. That's where I a lot of times come in and just sound things off with me, and then people would say, I want to do this and I would do that, and I would probably chop it up and say, look, don't do that. Don't do just because 10 people have told you invest in AI, probably not the best thing to do, although I have an AI lab myself in the business. But I would say probably, your problem is an automation problem, not an AI problem. So do that. Get a sense of maturity, understanding, and then jump in. Don't just jump on the bandwagon just for the sake of it, and things like that. So it's the right advisory, I think, and the right consulting that's more important in our services business than anything else.
And just on the topic of AI, I literally just came from an AI keynote at Cub before this.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on AI? Do you think, how important is it for businesses to use AI? Actually, just start with that.
Yeah. So, I think as a technology services business, we are definitely doing a lot of interesting work in AI. But then again, my approach or my strategy towards telling anything to anybody about AI is think twice. Don't jump. And I can assure you that if it is just a frugal way of looking at it, it's good. But if you just want to go in because everybody's saying you should, and that's the way to go, probably not the best time for you to do it. It's still at the very starting of a technology's maturity curve. So unless you just want to dabble with it, have fun, and just do a little side thing and see how it goes and what it does for you and all of that, fantastic. You should play around with any new tech that comes in. It's always good. You never know what comes out of it for you, for your more strategic long-term business goals. So don't turn a blind eye, but at the same time,
you don't need to dive in.
You just don't need to dive in, or just don't go all in and say, okay, if it's not AI, it's nothing. No, that's not the case.
That's literally the first time I have had anyone, especially anyone in technology who does sell actual AI, say that to me. Because always, I always hear, if you're not in AI, you're going to lose your business in 3 years. Yeah. I'm like, that's not...
not at all.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. AI will impact the future in a really important way. And yes, most businesses probably will end up having some AI within the business because it'll be more efficient and things like that. Yeah. But to be forcing and pushing people into using AI, I don't know if that's the way. And every time I speak to an AI expert, and that's what I want to ask you the next question, because every other time I speak to anyone in AI, I'm like, okay, can you tell me how I can use AI then?
Yeah.
And everyone's basically the same thing. It's like, well, what you do is, ChatGPT, you can ask questions and you can bounce ideas off it. I'm like, I know that. I don't live under a rock. Tell me how I can actually use it for my business.
Exactly.
And that's my question to you, is not for me specifically, but what is the best way, non-corporates, like SMEs, what is the best way for them, if they are to decide to use AI, how can they actually use it more than any of the large language models that are out there for them to use? And
I think I'll just simplify this, and we can talk for hours for this, and I have my own perspective on, AI and what all can you do in AI, because not only are we building a lot of cool stuff in AI ourselves and putting it in some of the products that we have, but we're, dishing it out as a key service. But the most important thing here is first identify a problem. Forget AI exists. Look at AI as any other piece of technology that exists out there. Look at the business problem that you're trying to solve. And if you can yourself, otherwise get somebody to help you through identifying the most cost-efficient way of solving that problem. That could be AI, that could not be AI. Forget this whole, don't get into this whole mindset of saying AI is the only way to solve that problem. It isn't. And I say that
As someone who knows.
Yes, from someone who knows. And a lot of my peers say, you always shoot yourself in the foot. And I say, so be it. I'm kind of wired that way to not just talk bullshit. But at the same time, taking nothing away from the potential that this technology has. And I've seen it myself. It has forced me to go back to writing code, which I haven't written for I don't know how many years now. Because of being a CEO, you don't get time for it. But I'm so excited about it that I've started to dabble with it myself, opened up my own little project and writing stuff away whenever I get time. And I'm very excited about it. But it's optimism, which has to have a sense of realism. So
yes, that's a great way to put it.
So that's where people are getting blindsided. You got to be kicked about the fact that there's this piece of technology or this whole technology environment and ecosystem that has come about, but be real.
Yeah, and it is very, like you said, it's at the very start of its growth curve.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you're not using it yet, you aren't going to lose your business. But it's something to just keep an eye out for. If you can use it cost effectively to help you solve a problem, then good.
And take small steps.
Yes, little steps in it. I think that's good advice.
Start with something small. You want to use it for just, bouncing off a few ideas, go to ChatGPT or whatever LLMs you want to use. Yeah. Fire away, use it. See what comes out of it. You want to use it in marketing. Get one of your guys to just start using that, build out content, see what it does, play around, do that. You want to do a little bit of number crunching. Yes, of course. Do all of those things and kind of try and find your right formula. But don't just say that, look, if it's this or nothing. That's not where we are.
Yeah.
It's kind of I don't know what shape it's going to take. There's this huge, initiative that's happening globally on saying that we need to control what we should and shouldn't do with AI, because that's the other thing. And we will have to set boundaries. We will have to create those realms within which AI needs to work and not go beyond. At some point in my professional career, I've been a ethical hacker as well. So I'm always...
An ethical hacker?
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cool. So if I needed you to hack someone...
I will not do it.
No? Even for a lot of money? Yeah.
No, I have given that up. But yeah, if it's a lot of money, I might just think about going back at it.
It's good to know you have these secret skills.
Yeah. So it's all picked up. So I'm not academically trained to be somebody who can write code. I've picked it up. So I'm from the street smart crop.
Where are you from, actually?
Street smart crop is what I would say is...
What does that mean?
It means somebody who's picked up their skills, by getting their hands dirty, by, going into the trenches and doing things themselves, learning it on the job, as we call it.
And where are you actually from?
So I'm from India.
I got that far on my own. We're from in India.
So from northern India, New Delhi, born and brought up, and then, traveled the world, did a few things. The entrepreneurship bug kind of bit me early on for various reasons. I think I hit the glass ceiling very early on in my life, in my professional career. I became the youngest head of business for a technology company, and I didn't see anywhere that I could go beyond that. And the other thing was, I realized early on that I'm a bit of a visionary. I kind of need that whole thrill of being able to ideate, being able to come up with these concepts,
you enjoy
solutions and thinking. You could just... I go into a state of zen when I'm thinking about a solution to a problem or thinking up a new idea. That's my zen.
That's funny. Sometimes I tell people, I always say to Laura, is like, sometimes I think my full-time job is just to sit there and think about stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, other than like, maybe leadership and motivation, really a lot of it's just sitting around thinking, drawing pictures and shit. It's funny being a CEO.
Yeah, it is.
Sit around just thinking about things.
Yeah.
And so you're in New Delhi?
Yeah.
was where you grew up. And were your parents in business, or what was
So I'm the first generation entrepreneur, and that's the other thing, right? I knew that I have a slightly thicker skin and a risk-taking appetite that I felt is probably a very essential element of starting your business.
Yeah.
To give you an example, on the day I got married, I was broke. I had no job.
Hey, that's a risk.
Talk about it. I had no job. I had quit my job because I felt that's it. And I had still not started my business. And I had very little, or I would say practically broke. And I said, that's all right. Everything has to be done at a particular time. You can't delay it. So that's probably where I felt, I think I have the appetite to take a certain level of risk, not shy away from a good fight, not shy away from failing. In a lot of meetings and public speaking that I do, if somebody asks me what's entrepreneurship been like, and my response always is that I'm the king of my mistakes. That's entrepreneurship 101 for me. I've made so many, but I've learned each time, and I've got up each time, and I've marched on. So that's how I've picked up most of what I know and how I run a business. All of that has come through that. So,
and it takes time, doesn't it?
It does.
Your business is 20 years old now, is that correct?
Yes.
How long do you think it took you to become actually good at business?
I think the first 5 to 6 years was just, I was a kid in Wonderland. And I was
just playing. It's like a game at that point. That's how I felt.
It is. And, it's only after that period when you started to get to, you started to sprout, I would say. And the first few shoots had come out is when you say, okay, all right, there needs to be some method, and there has to be some way of how do you do all of this, and how do you handle the growth that you're seeing, and how do you address this problem, that problem. You haven't seen this problem before. So how do you do it? And then that's when you say, okay, all right, let's start running it like a business and not just, an idea factory, or not just
like a game. I know that's not a good word to like use, but it can feel like a game at the start. Like it can feel like there's no method to the madness. It's just madness, and you might be doing okay, but it really feels a bit mad. Like, when you do realize, wait a second, if we want to get big and things to work correctly and every customer to have the same experience and, all these type of things, you're like, okay, wait a second, we need to actually organize ourselves.
Absolutely. We got put into situations where, we didn't know what to do. Today I can confidently say that we are we are the Davids who are in the Goliath beating business, because even being a mid-sized business of a few hundred employees globally, we've beaten companies 10 times our size in a lot of projects. But it wasn't the case always. We were rooted out, booted out so often that we had to, basically learn from what was not working, what was wrong, where were we missing the mark, and all of those things. So a lot of that learning, pushed us. If nothing else, it forced, the mind and me to think that, okay, you either become a leader that leads by example, or, you just die into this whole haze of hundreds and thousands of people doing the same thing that you're doing. So it kind of just, I took the former path of saying, okay, let's lead by example, so you got to pick up, learn, and do things and lead people in a way that they say, okay, if he can do it with that little time that he has, then I'm the one who's supposed to do that full time. So I better.
Yeah. I also like in the sense, like what you're saying is, like you were learning from mistakes.
Yeah.
As the owner, like you are the king of your own mistakes or queen of your own mistakes. Like you own them.
Yeah.
And therefore you're not fearful. Like, yeah, you're fearful of making them because it could impact the business, but you're not fearful of your job because it's you, and one way that I, like a conscious thought I had at one point when it comes to leading by example is that, well, I'm probably the most knowledgeable in terms of business, especially this business, more so than anyone on my team. But that's probably because I've made the most mistakes.
Yeah.
And so then I had this kind of thought process where like, if I want my team to continue learning and growing, I need to give them the ability to make mistakes and not be fearful.
Yeah.
You know, as long as you're not making as long as you don't want people making all of them making the same mistakes.
Exactly.
Because, you know, they need to learn from each other. So, which means you need you need open communication about mistakes. So people are like, okay, I shouldn't do that because that might happen. But I think like leading by example, I make mistakes, therefore you're allowed to make mistakes too. And that's completely fine. In fact, it's encouraged because you're going to learn.
You know what? It's so interesting you said that. As part of my orientation with the middle management, anybody who comes in, one of the things that I tell them is make mistakes, but don't make the same mistake twice. Because if you make the same mistake twice, it means you haven't learned. So it's okay to falter, but every time try and falter on something new and not repeat the same mistakes. So that's actually the key, you know.
It is. I completely agree.
Yeah.
And so what's India like in terms of business?
Oh, it is very interesting. You know, we are fairly active in that market, you know, just like Australia.
What does that mean?
It means that, you know, we are actually working with a lot of enterprise and tier 1 businesses in that market across all our service segments. And, you know, we've got this new product that we launched recently, which is Neurotel, which is about, you know.
What's it called?
Neurotel.
Neurotel.
Yeah.
What is that?
So it's a hiring, onboarding, team engagement platform, HR suite for businesses that, you know, that are distributed in nature. Think retail, think franchisee businesses, think, you know, businesses with high churn and who have a fairly big bottom of the pyramid task force, like blue collar contract jobs and high churn rate. So it's kind of fine-tuned for that. And, you know, we've got one of Asia's largest pharmacy chains using that platform already. We've got, you know, that product working in 7 markets in the Middle East, you know, right now live in Arabic and English and one more regional language. So that's, you know, so it's a fairly active market. And in India, chances are that you name any industry, chances are that we probably have one of the top 5 brands in that industry as our client. So it's a fairly active market for us.
But what about India in general? Like, is it a place where employees work really hard? Can you get well-priced labor? What's the culture like towards, you know, work-life balance, or is there none? It's just that we're here to work, or like, you know.
No, I think it's interesting. From the time I started working, you know, I picked up my first job. It was not so much about work-life balance, but it was more about commitment and full-on work. We were just diving straight in and, you know, putting in all the time that we could. But over a period of time, I think, especially, I mean, I can talk more about the tech industry and the IT side of the task force and the people. There's been a certain sense of maturity that has come about. There's companies, you know, like us, smaller, bigger, everybody's more conscious about work-life balance, the right working environment, and there's more work being done to say that, okay, how do we make sure that everybody is motivated? You know, how are we trying to retain the talent that we need to retain, and what are the things that we need to do? What are the policies that we need to put in place? What are the incentives? What are the, you know, perks that you can give them, and all of that? So a lot of that has happened in the last 25 years. And today, I think in terms of work environments, it competes with anywhere and anybody in the world. In terms of facilities, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of talent, we probably beat a lot of countries. You know, the quality of talent and the pool size of the talent.
There's a lot of people. And why did India though become such like a, you know, like you hear so many development teams and technologies come from India. Yeah. Even a lot of the CEOs are coming from India, from the tech companies. Why did that happen?
I think, I don't know, somewhere, somehow in the DNA, somebody started dropping in bits and bytes in our bloodstream. So that kind of, you know, everybody is born with a natural affinity towards getting into technology. But no, I think you could attribute that to, the ability to, in general, have a more analytical mind. It's in our nature to commit and be a little more focused towards academics. If I look at my kids doing their schooling here versus my schooling back in the day, worlds apart.
What's the difference?
The difference is that what we teach here in grade or year 12 was taught in year 6 or 7 or 8 at best. And we were probably, by that standards, doing college level studies by the time we hit year 12. So academic structure is a far more intense structure, which I think could be one key reason why you see some of the best engineers, you see some of the best doctors, you see some of the best technology guys, all of those things coming out of India. It's just kind of gotten that social structure which supports this, I guess, kind of a stretch. So some amazing work happening, some amazing talent sitting there. I mean, I'm an angel investor and a mentor also, and I work with, and I have an active portfolio of startups in India. Almost it's up to 15 startups now, and I'm a venture partner for Asia's largest angel investment network that focuses on India. We've done 100 plus investments in that. So when I sit through these mentoring sessions, or I talk to these new startups who need help with their products or with their user experience or with their technology, all that guidance, and I see that, that infectious, I would say almost infectious energy, it's just unbelievable.
Being so involved in startups, what are the most common mistakes you see startups making? Like that's impeding their success?
Yes. Absence of a sense of practicality is one of the biggest mistakes startups make. They fall in love with the idea so much that whether it is the right product to take out to the market, whether it is the right shape in which it needs to go out in the market, whether it's going to be a sustainable product initiative, and a lot of other things are just sidelined. Plus, and this is something that I tell in a lot of workshops, is that don't make an MVP.
You'd say don't make an MVP?
Yes, make an MLP.
Oh, what's that?
So don't make a minimum viable product, make a minimum lovable product.
That makes sense.
So when you go out, make sure that it's a lovable product and not just a viable product. Because the world is at that stage of maturity, and we are as humans at that stage of maturity, that chances are that you're not hitting a green field anytime soon. So you're probably one of the many, or one of the few at least. And if it's not a lovable product, the first little jump that you need to continue on that path of being a startup falls short, and then a lot of these good ideas fall by the side because it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, I really, like when you say it, you're like, that makes a lot more sense than MVP. Yeah. But so just to clarify, you said they don't have a sense of practicality in the sense. Yes. Do you mean by that they're not willing to evolve the business and make big changes, and basically they're not willing to shape shift into what they need to become, as opposed to what they think they're supposed to be?
Yes. So practicality, of course, that's one where they're so clued into that idea that they think is the right idea that they're not listening to what somebody else is telling them. That's one. So they're a little rigid. They're not ready to pivot. They're not ready to take a hard right or a left, or even stop for that matter at times to say, no, don't go down that path now. So they're not ready to do that. That's one. The other is that, to give you an example, a lot of times when you build a SaaS product, what happens is that because you're trying to overdo so many things, the cost of that product, the subscription cost, gets to a point where nobody will buy it.
When you're trying to offer too many different solutions to problems.
So you haven't thought through the structure or the technology or the infrastructure that you need to put in place to make sure that you're nimble. You're a subscription product and you need to have a certain price point in mind, and you got to build for that. But you've just, being a true blue engineer or a true blue idealist, you've just gone out and built, which now is probably going to take $100 more than what somebody really wants to buy. And hence you're not getting any subscribers. Hence you're burning cash. Hence you're burning the investment that you've made. Hence a lot of those things start to happen, because we are at a stage, and I'm sure you know, where it's not just an idea on a paper that will get you the money you need.
Yeah, especially in this economy. You actually need to show.
And I don't think we're going to turn back from this anytime soon, even if the economy improves. There's a merit in seeing some runs on the board. There's a merit as an investor to see that. There's a merit in saying, how practical is the idea? Is the product out yet? Is this something that I want to put the money in? Even if money gets more freely available, even then I think the investment side of this business will not deviate too much to saying, oh, everything is good again. Let's just look at these 5 slides and put $1 million in. No.
I agree with that when it comes to people investing. So when it comes to private, private investments, like you or I investing.
Yeah.
But I do think that money can also be stupid. And there's always the next wave, like AI, for example. There's a lot of money flowing straight into AI products that have not done anything yet. They're just, here's the idea. Yeah. But the difference is the money's not the person who's investing its money. They might be a VC that holds a lot of money, or it's a fund that has a lot of money. So they're just saying, I don't want to miss on this trend. This is the big trend. We need to be in AI. We're like, just throw money at that. As long as the person looks like there's someone who knows, they're in the little AI cub, if you will, of the world. Yeah. Just throw money, because you're seeing money flows to trending investments.
It does.
But it's mostly institutional money, or like venture money, not private money. Private money is like, wait a second, it's my money, so I'm actually gonna. I worked for this, so I'm gonna actually look a bit deeper into it.
It's interesting. There's already this, and I was on the call yesterday itself with some mates in Silicon Valley. There's already a huge concern in the whole fraternity of VCs and investors and PEs and all that segment, that the first wave of AI hasn't delivered on its promise. So all this madness of being able to just throw dollars at anybody who said, oh, I've got an AI company or I've got an AI product, is already started to see some troubling situations coming off. And this will always happen. We can't resist. We are humans. We can't resist the FOMO of... Yeah,
FOMO, literally. You don't want to miss out. And you don't want to be the manager of a fund, or like, you don't want to be the head of a VC that was the only VC that didn't invest into this company, and that company goes to become Google. Like, you'll be fired. So they almost have to, and if the others invest, like really, if you were wanting to raise off VCs, like go get one great one or the 2 great ones, and like all the others will be willing to throw their money at you, because they're like, oh no, I don't want to miss out on that. Like, I'm gonna get in there. Human beings they're so cool, but they're so silly sometimes.
Yeah, that's us.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm not excluding me and you from
of course,
that. I'm at the center of that bucket.
So actually, so it plays on the whole human sentiment of saying, what if I miss this bus? What if I don't ride this wave? How do I get the returns I need to get to my, guys who've put the money in my fund, and so on, and, all of those things. So not all of it is bad, of course. A lot of it is, doing well. But yes, this whole wave that kind of starts to evolve is starting to, raise a few red flags already.
But there's a big lesson there, which is if you're a company and you want to raise capital, it's like, how do you sell your company as the bus they don't want to miss out on? Yeah. How do you create FOMO? Yeah. Like, really, that's it. Yeah. Like, how do you make it so that they're going to feel stupid? Like, they're going to be more scared not to give you money, just in case you kill it. That's the ultimate way to raise capital.
That is, capital raising is an art and a science, but more an art and less of a science. The science side of it is the product, which is to say, if the product is that good or the idea is that good, it's going to get funded. But a lot of those good ideas and good products still don't get funded because they didn't master the art of raising. There's this whole...
it's a different skill, that's why. It's a very different skill.
Yeah, I've had so many times there are co-founders, but only one shows up. The other one, will stay muted because he's not a good storyteller. The other one is, which is the right thing to do, is you put the best storyteller in front of people, who are going to invest in you, because he can then, sell the same story. Whereas the product is built better by the other guy who's really good at, that skill set. So it has to be, and I've actually said, it's so funny. There was this meeting that I was in a part of, and 100 people on that Zoom call, and the wrong person started to sell the story. Before the 30 minutes was out, there were 43 left. So that's the impact of the wrong person selling the story.
Literally looking at the impact of the wrong person.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you got to know what you're good at, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's also about, so you mentioned you got, how big's your team? A couple hundred?
Yeah. So we've got a little over 200 people.
So how do you manage that many people?
Oh, yes. It's again been it's been a story in progress where I've tried, I've tested, I've, done a few different types of, ways of working around things. And then finally, I think I've got the right formula where it is, we've built a strong middle layer in the sense that...
By middle layer, do you mean like middle management?
Middle management, yes, of course. So that middle management is then further, kind of broken down into different functions because we have these different service practices that we have. So each one is kind of responsible for that service practice, and then they've got further cadence that has been built under them, and it's constantly evolving. There's always this with the next spurt of growth. So from 200 plus to what happens when we go to 400. I'm sure there's going to change, is going to evolve. But what I've really seen, and the way it started was that one day I decided and I said, look, my phone has to stop ringing. And now let's work backwards. How do I make that a possibility? Because otherwise for us to have this chat was an impossibility at some point. I would say probably 10 years back, it was impossible. Phone is always off the hook. Clients calling, I'm part of every,
everything.
Day to day, and I'm just I've got all my 10 fingers into all the pies I could manage.
But I like that way you thought about it. You actually communicate things really cool. And how do I make my phone stop ringing?
Yeah.
And then what are the things I have to do to make that happen? Basically, how am I removing myself from the reasons people are calling me?
Yes. So,
and that forces you to not just delegate, but to build an org structure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was my goal, and I started working towards it. Took me a few years to get to a point where now my phone doesn't ring at all. It's just those one-off calls that I might just get, or a message that I would get. Otherwise, everything is structured, slotted into things and organized in a way where if I need to today, just for the next 2 weeks go off the radar, nothing happens. BAU as usual.
Yeah, that's when that's when I say anyway, that you've got a real business. Means that if you're not there, things are functioning beautifully. The same as without you. That's when you're like, okay, wow. Yeah. It's separate to me.
Yeah. And a lot of that depends on the kind of people you bring in. Also, you may have the best org structure that you put in place. You see some formulas that have worked for others and you want to, kind of copy that, which is good. Nothing wrong with that. But as long as you don't have the right people who fit into those slots, I think, any good org structure doesn't really work. So it's a people story, and I think it's important to bring up the word Neuronimbus, the name of the business. Has a story behind it, and that's all about people. So neuro is the short form for neurons, gray matter, so good minds, good talent. And nimbus is a collection, a cloud, right? So the collection of all good minds, the collection of best gray matter is actually the DNA of the business.
Do you know what I guessed? I'll tell you what I guessed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I was like, I was going to ask you the question. I wonder why that's the name. I thought it was like Neuronimbus. I thought it was like nimble minds. So like that's what I thought, like neuro, like
But
brain,
close.
and like,
Yeah, but close.
like, you know, like we can be nimble. We've got big brains, and we can be nimble in how we solve your products with technology. Either way, it works, made sense.
Yeah, it's kind of close, but it's an interesting take.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm here to give, but we have to wrap up. Do you want to maybe share? What, like, maybe we haven't done a favorite book in a while. Are you a reader?
I do. May not be a voracious reader, but I still do. I do tend to love to pick a book every now and then. And
is there one that's been the most impactful to your career?
there's no one book that has been very impactful for my career, but there have been a few interesting reads along the way. The one that I read, or I'm still reading right now, is The Power of Now. Which is...
What's that about? I haven't read that.
Oh, it's a good one. It's about saying that how it's important to not look at the past or the future, but focus on what's present. So it's a good take and an interesting point of view of saying, you and your mind are two different things. So kind of disassociate that and look at the only time you have is now. And the more you kind of, think about it, it's actually true. So what's happening right now is what it is. That's the time. There is no past. There is no future. You can't control any of those. What you can make good of is now. So it's a good piece of...
and why do you think that's relevant to you as a business person?
I think the reason why it's relevant is that sometimes for you to have clarity of thought, you need to kind of come out of this whole thing of, all right, what's not worked, what will work, there's a lot of whats and whys. But if you want to really think clearly for, let's say that, okay, what's the next interesting thing I want to do? What excites me? And all of those things, you kind of just come out of those numbers and those things and those, negatives to be in a very neutral frame of mind. I'm not saying necessarily very positive, but in a certain neutral state of mind to say, okay, all right, let's just take a beat. Yeah. Relax, get out of it, and then think through.
Like a mental way to step out of your business. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we do have to wrap up, but to our listeners, if you want to get in contact with Hitesh, talk about anything, technology, whatever, you go to cub.club/podcast and you'll find some really incredible information there, along with his greatest lessons in business, website and contact details. If you want to catch up with Cub on social, it's at Club United Business on Instagram. It's also awesome. Thank you so much, Hitesh. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, it was a hoot.
It was, yeah. See, in the moment. Great conversation.
Yeah, actually.
I hope you enjoyed the show.